Hi, I'm Barton Rubenstein, and I am a sculptor and public artist. I live with my family in Chevy Chase, Maryland. I've been doing that full-time for the last 20 years. I was previously a scientist, and somehow I migrated into the world of art. Making sculpture obviously entails choosing a material, and as a kid, my father and I made a lot of snow sculptures that we actually became quite well known in the community. But I soon realized that snow is temporary and all of our work turned to mush after a day when the Washington rains would show up. And I knew from an early point that if I was going to make sculpture as I do today, that I wouldn't be using temporary materials. And that's why I decided to use stainless steel and bronze, which, as many of us know, those are the materials that are preferred in the world of public art. I have chosen 3 different genres of art, which are kinetic sculpture that move in the wind, water sculpture that have water flowing, and also I have vertical sculptures. And all of them, by design, create a whole assortment of headaches, which I have to overcome. And engineering, which brings me back to my scientific background. So you need to know a little bit about how to work with materials. When I make my sculptures, I first have to start with the design. I typically have line drawings, which I draw, and then I go to the computer many times to help me visualize the sculpture in 3 dimensions. And once I have a sense of that, I typically go to fabrication in my studio, or I also will make a model either out of stainless or out of paper. That gives a really clear sense to myself and the client how the sculpture needs to be built. Once I'm in the studio, I work only with sheet material, stainless steel sheet material or bronze. The tools that I use in the studio are a welding machine and a plasma cutter. The plasma cutter cuts my metal into the shapes that I want. The welding machine brings them together and I weld them as one. And once I've created the shapes, then I will grind them with various grinding machines, and that will render the surface smooth, and it will also put on the finish that I like for my surfaces, which is like a brushed finish. The process of making my art also entails some coordination of building it and then somehow installing it on the site. But in general, all the work is done in the studio. I fabricate the sculpture there, and depending on the distance, I can either drive it in a U-Haul truck. I'll meet the client at the site and install it. I like to install most of my sculptures because they need a little extra attention. Sometimes the sculpture needs to be shipped far away, and I will build, happily, a big wooden crate, which I can do in 3 days, a very large crate. And I always love working with wood because that was one of my first loves. And then I put it on a truck, it disappears, and then I get on an airplane and meet the crate on the other side. One of the main things that is always there in my mind every day that I begin is safety. Safety to not get injured, safety not to breathe in fumes that are toxic, using materials that are safe. I use a special mask for my welding, and when I grind, there's particulates in the air, and you really need to do your research to do this properly, and you don't want to make any mistakes. When I do the installation, there's a lot of dangers there too, because you have a lot of excited people who want to see the sculpture up and they want to do it quickly. So anytime I do an installation, I always talk to everybody in advance and tell them that, the first thing is our health and safety, and that, if anything terrible happens, the first thing we want to do is just basically run from the site and not feel like you have to be the Superman to save the sculpture from falling over. I found very early on, working with a committee, that they need to have a story. A beautiful sculpture will not sell a client. It has to have a story, and it has to be connected to the vision of the school or wherever it's going. As an artist of today, you basically have to blaze your own trail. I come into art with a lot of diverse background in science and math and physics, and I find that really contributes to my ability to stand out and distinguish myself as an artist. I do like to encourage the kids even if they're completely focused to become artists, that they need to develop other interests that will contribute to their ability to be more creative, diverse artists.